Now, you got anything cool happen this week? Anything significant that'll affect the history of the world?
The history of the world. I
can't think of anything. No,
one thing.
I don't think so. Not that significant.
We had to argue with our landlords.
Goodness, yeah, we won't even get. I ate 6 feet worth of bread. That was pretty interesting.
Oh, that Trump guy.
Oh yeah,
he was a thing.
Oh,
he was a thing. Yeah, what the? How did that happen? Oh my god.
Well, I'm pretty sure I know why it happened. It's because
it's in retrospect. Dude. Hindsight's 2020.
It's this whole. Everyone gets a first place ribbon. Everyone gets their own opinion, and the only reason anyone actually liked Trump, I even sort of fell for. I was enamored by his boyish good look,
and suave hair,
and just how
masculine
he doesn't care at all about being politically correct is like a hated word now because everyone's saying it's sort of out of style. But I don't really know how else to explain it.
It was definitely a reactionary swing in American politics. So before that, you had 8 years of Obama, which means 8 years of Democrats, and then Obamacare being a significant talking point for. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or on the right, but it was a Democratic piece of legislation was always the central talking point of large scale political debates. So you were always exposed to ideas and commentary from the left. And so what happens naturally in the bubbles that we live in is that when something from the opposition is being talked about constantly, if you're on the opposite side, so if you're on the right side, if you're a Republican or conservative, your side within your echo chamber is only going to take the extremes, the most ridiculous aspects of the left. So the super PC, people who think everyone's a 53rd gender, that kind of thing.
Yeah. They
take that, they exaggerate it, and they demonize it. And so the only exposure you have to the opposite side is that caricature that no one could get on board with. And so the same thing happens on the left echo chamber. But the thing is, since the left was in the spotlight for most of the time, most of the damage was being done to that. So the reactionary, the right side could swing in like a pendulum, full swing, and now we have a populist insurgency.
Yeah, and now everything that let's even Democrats, liberals, anything they say now, in a lot of people's eyes, it's fake news or something to that effect. Now, fake news. That word's also becoming out of style. It was cool 3 months ago. Now it's just...
Well, that's such a shame, Every now and then you get a word that perfectly describes something. Well, in this case, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Fake. It's news that is just false. Fake news. But it happens so often where people just exaggerate it and use it to portray something they don't agree with. Just because it has a negative connotation. Fake news has a negative connotation. Even though it specifically means news that is false, people take it to say that op-ed piece that made my side look bad, fake news. That thing that praised Obamacare, fake news. Or if you're on the other side, that thing that demonized Obamacare, fake news. So now it means nothing. It means a lot less than it used to.
And I mean, it doesn't really even change anything. Like we've had fake news has been around forever. I mean, the whole Facebook thing, it's made it super popular and accessible to everyone. But it's not like fake news is a new thing ever. I bet it's even less because back in the day, the 1950s, one newspaper guy could put out absolutely anything, wouldn't get called on it just because there's only the spread of news is less, so that there's less polarizing things to argue against each other.
What was this back then?
1950s. It was like one big rich guy that owned a paper company.
but I think I don't know. I think there's a difference between centralization, which was definitely the case, and still today. Like Rupert Murdoch owns 80% of news organizations, something absurd, which is just that's crazy to me. That's not okay. But that aside, I don't think it's a matter of centralization versus decentralization with the internet. It's a matter of low barrier to entry. So nowadays, any guy with a laptop and an internet connection can start a blog, and he can start writing about anything.
I mean, look at us. You guys probably believe us right now. We could be lying through our teeth.
Talking over asses right now. No,
there's about 50% chance this is going to be fake news.
Yeah, they don't know. Who knows? I don't know. But it's a low barrier to entry. The fact that anyone with a laptop and internet connection can get a small following. It could be on Twitter, it could be a blog, a YouTube channel, podcast, whatever. And they can put out whatever they want. And once people start creating this, they start creating the world in which they consume their media. So like their YouTube subscription feed, their Twitter followers, their Facebook friends. Once they have that established, they trust that network. And anything that comes from that network is taken as gospel.
Yeah,
So it could be fake news, it could be real news. It's all taken on the same.
That's why people like Alex Jones, and I mean like BuzzFeed even. Like if you go on that channel, like and they'll even if it's a new opinion that those channels are putting out, they're just going to conform to it blindly, absolutely blindly. I mean, I'll have a video coming out later about Alex Jones and the gay frogs incident. Everyone that listened to that believed him. I mean, whenever I go on to Alex Jones or listen to his YouTube thing, it's either because I've gone too far down the rabbit hole on YouTube,
Definitely have.
or I just want a little bit of entertainment. The guy's entertaining. I mean, he's fake news through and through, but you get a good laugh when the guy goes off on his crazy rants.
New World Order.
And about fake news, apparently, Obama's dog... I might have told you, one of you, I told that Obama's dog bit a girl in the White House. Absolutely no news organizations covered it. The head of the White House, I don't know what it's called, do you know?
Like chief correspondent or whatever?
Chief
Secretary?
staff member or whatever. Something, and he was doing a press conference, and the whole audience was like, did you hear about this? And then they were like showing pictures to the guy, and he was like, nope, haven't heard anything about it.
Oh my God. It's a cover-up.
And then everyone started laughing because he said, I believe the first dogs have been excellent ambassadors of the American dream. Something to that effect.
What?
I'm paraphrasing here.
The first dogs.
And he did use the word ambassador. Have been great ambassadors too. It was ridiculous.
So who covered it?
It was stuff like Breitbart.
No.
And you think, okay, you immediately think that's fake news, and it actually wasn't. The girl Snapchat the whole thing, and millennials, they go crazy on that thing. So it's not like one picture was leaked, and it was sort of at a weird angle. She was in the White House doctor's office, I think, getting stitches or getting prepared to get stitches, and like the whole night and it was blaming the dog and everything. Like there wasn't even any hiding it. And CNN, even Fox, I mean, they have every right to. Well,
I think that kind of illustrates the importance of having the ability to critically think about things. So you said only was it Breitbart?
It was Breitbart and Alex Jones.
Okay, so the two least credible sources you can imagine. Right?
Yeah, and Snapchat was their evidence,
but just taking that as a true fact, just to illustrate the point, I think it shows the importance of learning and applying critical thinking, because you should be able to go to Breitbart News and Alex Jones, and if you think Fox News is the devil, Fox News. If you think MSNBC is the devil, MSNBC. And you should be able to go there by yourself without anyone coaxing you or without anyone guiding you and nudging your opinion along the way, and be able to distinguish for yourself what's likely to be true, what's likely to be false, where are the biases coming into the equation, and you form your own opinion that way. So in the cases where a news source that you think is completely off the walls starts covering something that no one else is covering, in the age of fake news that we live in, you have to have the skills, you have to have the capacity to look at it and determine for yourself, is this something that is this real, is this false, is this something that people should know about?
I hope that's what the world's going towards, because right now you're absolutely right that like society's just being polarized. You're either a completely left or completely right, and everyone in between is going to hate on you if you're not one of those extremes.
Basically.
Now, obviously, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I mean, and people in those bubbles, they're not going to think twice. So I hope what's going to come out of this fake news thing is that everyone has to think for themselves. The BuzzFeed editor that came out with that, I think it was Christian I spoke to, about the golden showers thing, where BuzzFeed
Trump.
Yeah, it might have been you. But BuzzFeed came out with this news story that Donald Trump was in a golden shower video. So if you don't know the backstory, you guys, the thing that BuzzFeed published in their article was something to the effect of Donald Trump was in a golden showers video. But what the actual evidence said, don't look it up. Don't look it up. If you're under the age of 18, don't you dare look it up. The videos doesn't exist, by the way.
Because it didn't happen.
Yeah, but even the evidence that BuzzFeed got was even more ridiculous. Like it was something being passed around to the heads of media or whatever. But what the actual evidence said, it was something to the effect of he got strippers to come to a hotel in China or Japan or Russia, somewhere, I think it was Russia, and desecrate the bed that Obama once slept on by performing a golden shower scene and Trump was filming the thing.
No, Putin.
Putin
was filming Trump in this golden shower.
Oh goodness!
Oh my god! So what was their source for that?
They're not even really releasing it. They released a link to the article, but it was just I think it was. Some people think it was 4chan guys that leaked it,
Classic.
and it perfectly explains the whole thing. How they can sneak into that world and present it as actual evidence. I mean, the head of the CIA or whatever said that it wasn't definitely by the intelligence community.
Obviously not.
But a lot of news articles have covered it that it's this whole 4chan community.
The hacker 4chan.
Yeah. They're notorious for pranks, though.
Oh, they're hilarious.
They're crazy.
They ever gone on 4chan before? They ever gone on the right? Oh my god, those guys are twisted.
You can't. I swear you get put on a government list when you go onto that site. Some of it's bad. Some of it's bad. You can get pretty deep in it. It gets bad.
I mean, like if you're on it for a while, most of it is like the weird stuff is like weird porn and like gore. But then every now and then they'll do like raids on websites and they'll upload like really bad stuff to like an elementary school's website.
No.
Yeah. Or what was it? They got cuts for Bieber trending on Twitter like a couple years ago.
That was them?
No way! 100% them. And so they got
people were actually just doing that.
Yeah,
adding on to it
why?
too.
Like they I think Bieber got caught for something, or they were saying Bieber got caught for something, and so they were uploading pictures of like people who cut their wrists, and they were onto fake Twitter accounts that acted like 14 and 15-year-olds.
Yeah, you meant haircuts.
No, like
whoa! I
think this is when he got arrested. I might be wrong.
Wait,
for
was
peeing
it
in a garbage can.
It
was definitely not haircuts. It was like cutting.
It was.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, whichever one. The point is, anyone.
Whichever
one it was. No, the point is, 4chan or any kind of hive mind can really make an issue out of nothing, or they have so much more power because of the world we live in that when you start seeing the hive mind doing one thing and you're just an individual and you see this thing trending on Twitter, it has such a force on you, especially if you're a young 14 15-year-old girl who goes crazy, absolutely insane over freaking JBs. So like when you see that plus like 10,000 people tweeting the same thing, you hop on board. And so again, it's so important to learn how to call people out on their BS. It's so important.
We just did Black Mirror, which is sort of the premise of a lot of that thing, how technology and everything can completely influence.
Oh, the first episode the first season 1 episode 1.
Was it
season 1 episode, the one with the prime minister who had to do the thing with the pig?
Oh, good. Okay,
yeah, that was weird. But the point I was illustrating is that once because what was the premise? So the premise was that the princess was captured, and that whoever captured the princess said, "I need you to do this indecent act with this pig on national TV." And everyone was like, "That's ridiculous. It's never going to happen." And then people started realizing...
And the polls in the beginning were like... It was completely ridiculous that the guy wouldn't have to do this indecent act.
And then they sent like a fake finger to a news organization, and all of a sudden, popular opinion swung in the opposite direction, and then, everyone starts freaking out saying, "You should totally do it for the princess, exactly. Put your pride aside, there's someone's life on the line." And he did it.
And it's like
it's because of the mob mentality.
It's a snowball effect. I mean, even if you weren't convinced before that poll came out, like you had voted for that he would have to do that indecent act with it. When you see that it's the popular opinion on news, the rest of the people are just going to jump on with it. And the whole ending of it was about, like, it panned to, it was hundreds of people, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think what they were trying to portray was that you don't really know what you want, and the mob mentality had sort of dragged everyone in a direction that no one even wanted.
Well, to frame the scene a little bit, so it was like an hour-long thing on TV. It was live streamed everywhere. Like 1 billion people watched.
The Indecent Act.
Yeah, the Indecent Act. And after watching, and during watching it, all the characters in the show, like, they have their hands over their mouths, their jaws are on the floor, no one's saying anything. Everyone has cold sweat dripping down their faces. And it slowly starts to sink into the viewer that what those people are thinking is, "Oh my God, what did we do? This was our doing.
Yeah.
He only did it because we wanted him to. We don't actually know what we want."
You guys,
that was the conclusion.
You guys know I like things with happy endings.
Yeah.
So that messed me up. I hated that episode. I mean, the whole premise of it is interesting, and I mean, I sort of thought in the beginning it must be ridiculous. Like, who would ever actually vote for that? But by the end of it, it sort of made sense, like how it would happen, and it could happen. I don't think it ever would, but
well, I mean, you just kind of look. Trump is not that bad compared to, what happened in that episode. Like, just objectively speaking. But no one ever thought that, a populist who said he groped women and, said racist things here and there and, demonized immigrants to the extent that he did, all that stuff. No one ever thought anyone could get elected to the most powerful position on the planet. No one ever thought it would happen. But once he made the comment about, the wall and having Mexico build it, it gained some traction with a small following. People started paying attention because you have a small, dedicated group of people following this guy, and it's covered all over the news. And so the individual who's an undecided voter who doesn't know any better goes, "Wait, maybe there's something here."
Yeah, it was like they said it a lot, but it was a free advertising.
Yeah,
like even if it's bad things,
the media.
It's like the names constantly being put in their head, and Trump sort of turned it in a way where everyone. It was like the people versus the media, and the media got like sort of bunched in together with Washington D.C. and everything.
Yeah, the establishment.
Yeah. Oh goodness.
But again, that's why we need people to learn critical thinking, to be able to peel apart opinions, peel apart facts, understand where the biases come from, how the argument's structured. People need to have that skill of critical thinking, and it sucks. You can tell people this all you want, but once. The issue with telling people to practice a skill like this, or at least try to acquire it, is that you hear the word critical thinking and it's just such a buzzword.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you hear it so much, it almost means nothing. But if you kind of unpack it a little bit and understand what's underlying the definition there, which is being able to dissect news sources, arguments, opinions, facts, and how they all connect to each other, then all of a sudden, that changes everything overnight. Now you have a more informed democracy. Now you have policymakers who are more in touch with what an educated populace wants, what their preferences are. It's a complete game changer. But, it's tough to teach that. Yeah.
Now, a lot of our viewers are going to be like, "Oh, that sounds hard. I have to be super educated, super this." Especially on, like, the usual everyday thing. It's not that hard. I mean, you just have to think about it, like, does that actually make sense? Oh, goodness. And you need to think that, like, if a news organization throws up a 2-second clip with somebody saying something, you need to go back and look at the larger thing. The reason why so many people discredited the media and why Trump was right in some cases was because they would take 2 seconds, where 2 seconds after and 2 seconds before he would completely change the statement.
Yeah, they'd splice out the important bits. That kind of changed the meaning.
If you had shown the 5 seconds where he said everything, like his rape comment about Mexicans, like, crossing the border. The media said all rapists...
All Mexicans are rapists.
Yeah, all Mexicans are rapists. If they had focused on the 2 things on either side and still said that's a bad narrative, no one would have disagreed, because it is. The fact that they took the 2 seconds and then bombarded Trump like that, Trump discredited the media by saying they didn't show the whole clip. It's still wrong what he said.
That's a good point. That he actually discredited the media.
No, he did.
He discredited them.
And the media, it was just a cycle effect. The media kept helping him out by putting him on the news, whether it was negative or not, saying this populist really is where the world's going right now. And it's also going in a more, like, nationalistic viewpoint. Populist. Now, like, Australians going to have their elections and they think it's going to go to
France,
the Republic. Yeah, that was going to be the next one.
Italy had a referendum where they just elected. Well, it was, I can't remember the exact details, so I probably should be talking about it with that much. But they had a referendum in, like, December, where it was like a yes or no for some constitutional amendment. But it was essentially a vote of confidence of, do you like the current government? And the current prime minister was like, all right, if they vote, I think it was no, I believe it was, I'm going to resign. And they voted no. And the people pushing the no vote was this populist political party. Now, I don't know if they're in power now. I know the governor of Rome is she's a big figurehead within this populist party.
Okay.
But you hear the rhetoric, and it is textbook populism. We have these corrupt politicians who are running the show. They've lost touch with the people. We need to take the government back, make it empower the people again, and really bring the government back, underneath the populace.
Now, is that
it's
really?
Everywhere.
I mean, it's spreading. Do you think it's really the right idea, though? I mean, it is a good idea to, like, take back the government, and I do believe in smaller government makes, like, a better society and distributing the control. Like, it's just a good thing. We can argue about that on a later episode. I'm sure a lot of you disagree, but I think a lot of people are using it to their advantage. Like, Trump in the beginning, I think he really hated everything. But once he saw the ball rolling, he just doubled up, and it sort of turned into the point where everyone's going to use it. I'm sure that what's his name, Mr. Wonderful,
Kevin.
Yeah, he's trying out.
He's already denying global warming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way that guy doesn't believe in global warming. Okay, if you guys don't know, he's on. If you're American, you probably know him from Shark Tank. If you're Canadian, Dragon's Den it was.
Yeah, he was on Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
Shark Tank.
He's this billionaire guy, super smart. Like, there's no. I don't believe Trump doesn't believe in global warming.
I don't believe that.
I think he has his doubts, but he only spread that rhetoric because, number one, he was running as a Republican, and number two, just because it was a controversial thing that he could say. There's no...
The free advertising is what he wanted. He wanted the free advertising.
Yeah. There's no way these... Now, their whole perspective on the whole global warming thing was that pollution is a problem, but global warming isn't. It's just natural up and down.
Right.
Maybe I'll do a video. Maybe we'll do a later podcast on it, but that's just false. I mean,
Yeah,
the world's warming up, and
it's like if you're sick, you go to a doctor. If you want to know what's happening in the climate, you go to a climate scientist. You go to a Republican congressman.
I mean,
who takes a freaking snowball, puts it in the middle of the Senate floor, and is like, "See, global warming is not true." Oh my God, we're fucked.
Oh goodness.
But no. So you had the question: is populism like desirable? Is it a good thing?
Yeah.
That deserves a whole episode on its own. But I think in brief, the issue I take with populism is that it's a movement that masquerades as like, you know, we're championing the everyman, the common folk, the blue collar worker, you know, the factory worker, the steel mill worker, and we're gonna make them prosperous because there's this massive wealth distribution, and you know the elites are getting all the gains. The common person is not, and I'm gonna fight for you. And of course, it's a billionaire fighting for him, but like that's besides the point. The reason that it's that movement, I think, it's masquerading as that when in reality it's a divisive movement. It takes the current issues of the day. So, you know, labor force participation rate is down like 4% on that, which is a lot. It's like 68 or 66 normally. It's like 62, 64, something like that. People are underemployed. People are not owning homes. It's like down 2% home ownership rates based off of like before the financial crisis. And so people take issues that a large majority of people are facing and they pin it on the other. So you could pin it on, most of the time they pin it on immigration. So in the States we pinned it on Mexican immigration, even though most of the immigration doesn't come from Mexico, it comes from South America, but that's besides the point. In Europe, they blame the Syrian refugees. Italy and Greece are super against the Syrian refugees. I have a lot of family back in Sicily, and they get a lot of refugees coming through Sicily and like southern Italy, and the local population is having none of it.
Okay, but no.
But I think it's a like a xenophobic mentality masquerading as, you know, championing the common person's good.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone who voted for Trump is necessarily racist. I don't even think the majority of them are.
Yeah.
But the issue is that the racism and the sexism were not deal breakers, and that's because populism really took over, and the mob mentality did the rest of the work.
Yeah, I think that the situations are different with like Mexicans and the whole Syrian refugees. They're not doing it nearly as well in Germany and everything. And I think the reason why the whole world's going to shift to a populist view, and like that's why Brexit happened, was because the average person was being affected by the influx of immigrant, or the fear of influx of immigrants.
Right, they're going to take our jobs.
Yeah, which is probably unfounded in a lot of cases.
Oh, 100%. If you ever studied history, it's like I remember studying my U.S. history back in high school, and they made a really strong point to emphasize. They had like citations and sources and all that. They were like, in the I want to say 1850s, the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, every single time the local population always complained about immigrants stealing their jobs. In every single case, that was never what happened.
Yeah.
So taking the jobs don't want.
I think that's perfectly true. And I think that immigrants are the hardest workers. I mean, even if...
That's why they're coming here.
The whole reason that America ended up being so great is because you got people from all around the world coming and working their asses off.
Oh my God, look at the Italians, the Germans, the Irish.
Every street corner you go on, you can't see a business that's not owned by an Italian or an Irishman. It's crazy.
Or all of our leading universities have Chinese and... Mostly
they're taking over the world. They're taking over. We don't even have a chance.
That's a big.
We don't have a chance.
Topic. We can't cover that right now. But no, immigrants are either and there's a generalization, which I really shouldn't make, but I think it's pretty founded. Immigrants tend to either be the hardworking, low-class, not in like a formal sense, in an economic sense, the hardworking, low-class workers, or they're the brilliant scientists coming from China and India and Pakistan that are flooding our graduate schools.
Yeah. And I don't... Immigration is a good thing. It might not be good for those countries. Like, for the Syrian perspective, obviously people are leaving.
See,
because...
that's so different, though. You can't... And I hate it when liberals do this. When they say, well, back in World War II, all these countries in Northern Africa, they took hundreds of thousands of European refugees. When Germany made it into France, when Germany took Poland, they took all these refugees. Why aren't we doing the same? Yeah, it's a humanitarian crisis. I'll give them that. And it absolutely is. And it's terrible. But the flip side is, you would be naive to think that it's also not a security threat.
No,
I'm not saying someone from Lebanon, not Lebanon, like Syria is necessarily more harmful, but ISIS is not stupid. Frankly, they'd be very stupid not to try and send, some of their ISIS soldiers or whatever you want to call those people through the borders. Masquerading as Syrian refugees. So it's a security issue. It's humanitarian and it's a security issue. So it's not one-sided. Yeah. You can't present the other side as completely wrong. And I hate it so much when... And the left is more guilty of this than the right, for sure. When a group of people start presenting the opposite side, the opposing ideology as objectively wrong. If you're a Republican, you're a homophobe. How dare you? You're a sexist. How dare you? That's not the case. These arguments are very complex. There's two sides and two strong sides to almost every single issue. And I say almost because climate change and things like that, that's not debatable at this point. Yeah. But to almost every political issue, there are two strong sides. So when someone starts hand-wavingly accusing the other side of being, some derogatory, some ism, they're promoting xenophobia or racism or sexism, any of those. Then if you're on the right, you get pissed off. Yeah. And when you see someone like Trump coming up who's saying, hey, F that side, these people have had control for too long. They think that we're stupid. They think that we don't know, but we're better than that. And I'm going to be your champion. It only drives that side forward.
And the thing is, it's somewhere in between. Trump is not right with that. Trump sort of acts like every single person is. And I know he's been misquoted on this, but like throughout his whole campaign, for instance, he specifically came out and said, ban all Muslims. That was obviously for a wow factor, and it caused so much controversy. Maybe that's what he was trying to do, but that's absolutely... And then he was like... Then they were asking questions, like little semantic baby questions, like, what about sports athletes? What about this? What about that? And they are missing the point. And the reason why Trump can come out and say that and not get an absolute shitstorm is because so many people agree not more with Trump, but less with the media, because the media is completely promoting this whole that we need to accept every single immigrant, and it's wrong not to. And the Democrats are pretty much doing that too. In the U.S., they're a little more reserved, but like in Canada, like last year, they wanted as many as possible. Yeah. They've sort of lightened up on that. But the only reason we're having this extreme Trump side is because we've created the whole extreme other side and treat everyone like absolute idiots.
Exactly. They're so used to be treating like they're always in the wrong that they will permit anything that's someone who's going to champion their ideology. They'll permit anything. They get, whether it's like I can do whatever I want to do, I can grow up and kiss and do whatever. All these Muslims, they should not enter our country. Mexicans, they're not sending their best people. They're rapists. They're murderers. I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to separate our people and their. And so it creates these terrible narratives. But you're at the point where you've been victimized by the media so much and by the opposition who has had the presidency for 8 years that you're just fed up with it. And you're like, I don't care what he says. I don't care if he says this racist thing, this sexist thing. Either I'm going to try and justify it or defend it, or I just don't think it's as important as fighting back. And so they fight back and they go in the voting booths and they win the election in every branch of government.
Only those people have to blame are themselves, because it's the choice that we have, not that I'm American, is one or the other. Even though and it's incorrect in saying that one vote for Trump is a vote for Hillary. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, that is, you should vote for really who you want to vote for, and that's sort of what the whole thing about democracy is. But it was either Hillary who's
most establishment candidate in history.
the most like textbook. If you were gonna, she's been in the system for I'd say probably 35, 40 years. She's been in there a really long time. Like, and from the very beginning, she was like getting groomed. Apparently, like that they had a plan for.
Well, that's why Obama appointed her Secretary of State.
Yeah,
and there was no way that the DNC didn't go up to him and say, "Hey, if we want control after your potential second term, you elect your former Democratic rival as Secretary of State." If you go through American history, if you get the vice presidency, that's almost a death sentence for your political career. It is very rare that a vice president goes on to become president, but through re-election. That's very rare. But secretaries of state, way in numbers that are much greater than VPs going from VP to the presidency, secretaries of state are almost always the prime candidate for the presidency. So, I mean, if you think that there wasn't some backdoor negotiation or some
100%,
planning,
100%,
then you're ridiculous. And so I think people saw through that to a large extent. And you have this. Honestly, it was the perfect candidate for someone like Trump. It was the perfect timing, perfect timing.
Exactly.
In that he could discredit, and this still blows my mind. And you really phrase it best. He discredited the media because he had Twitter. That wasn't going to happen 4 years ago. It was not going to happen. Maybe 4 years ago, but more so today. And second, Hillary was the perfect candidate for Trump because Trump was anti-establishment and she was textbook establishment. There was no way Trump was going to win under any other circumstances.
The only person that had a fighting chance was Bernie, and Bernie would have gotten a lot of voters from Trump, and so many Bernie voters went to Trump because it was just anti-establishment. Hillary had so many questions behind her, and I mean, Bernie just think is the most honest guy. Back in like the 80s, there was interviews with him with his curly little hair where he was making the same jokes, the same mannerisms, just the honest speech he had today. I mean, Zach, you loved the guy, didn't you? Out of all of us, you probably liked him the most.
Yeah, I mean, he was the most like any Canadian politician, I'd say, in the sense that he was genuine and reaching for more of a socialist concept.
I mean, you don't even have to back socialism.
No, but
to want someone who's honest. So, I mean, I have no way of 100% knowing, like many other things, that he was, the most honest candidate. But there comes a point where you can say with a little certainty that this guy, he really believed in what he was preaching. I mean, there's pictures of him in like the 60s or 70s being hosed down, but with a bunch of like civil rights black activists. I don't think he was hosing. I think he was like protesting with them while like the riot police is there or something like that. This guy really he walked the walk and he talked the talk. I mean, he was very, very genuine from all the evidence we have available.
He's the most genuine candidate for a long time. Like Hillary was running for who knows what, but there's probably 100 different things Hillary was running for. Trump was running partly as an ego trip. I do think he sort of wants to make America better, but I also think the guy has one of the biggest egos on the planet,
for sure.
And this has just pumped it up. Like,
oh my god!
Like think about it, but he's worth between 5 and 10 billion. So you don't think there's really that much you can achieve in life. I mean, he owns an empire, and it's like, what's the next? I'll run for frickin' president, and then he gets it. And this guy is smart. I don't think all of this, like his timing, everything he said. Guy's not an idiot. I bet it was planned. I mean, if he had run against Obama 4 years ago, he would have lost.
He definitely stepped up just because Hillary was.
No way. Obama
was perfect. Or even in the original thing, Obama was just less confidence in Obama when he first ran back in 08. 07. 08 was when he was inaugurated. Back in 07. I mean, the guy was one of the best speech makers of all time, even back then. You showed me like was it Iowa? No, it was Illinois? Chicago. Where's he from?
He's from Chicago.
Yeah, and one of his first speeches that he did at the DNC.
Right, that's when everyone started finding out about
holy
this guy.
Smokes.
Unbelievable. Unfreaking. And that's Obama on a mission. So it's like DNC, I think it was the DNC. Was it not the inauguration when they elect their candidate? I think it was
the primary DNC.
When the primary ends, if you look it up, I mean you can Google.
I think
Obama
that must have been back 04, right?
It was 04. Yeah. It was 04 because it was 4 years before because they were grooming him too.
Yeah.
And he gave this bomb of a speech, unbelievable, and that's Obama on a mission, right? So you watch this speech, you're blown away. You compare that to the speeches that he's been giving, like in 2 years before his presidency ended. He was just so defeated. just drained. He was like, God, this country is they just don't get it yet. They're not on board. I can't do anything about it at this point. But if you go back to his re-election and you throw a Trump-like figure, oh my God, Obama from 2004 comes right back, smacks him down, no questions asked.
And I mean, like, the way he does his speeches, like, I've never seen anything like that. I mean, it was sort of so different in the sense where, I mean, you've been doing the Martin Luther King things, and the guy had a completely different style than everybody else. And it drew the world at storm.
Oh my God!
You were the one telling me that you had like listened to one of his things recently.
Ooh, Martin
Luther King. I mean, like I've heard, I've had a dream and everything.
No, Martin Luther King they just don't have speeches like that anymore. So I was listening to, I can't remember what it was called. I think it was in a church, and he had a couple lines where he said, "Somewhere I read of," and then he started listing like things in the Constitution. Somewhere I read like that, and he had this unbelievable charisma behind him where you're reading this and like this is like the 60s, 70s, and so it's way far removed from our generation, the 20-something-year-olds of the day, and you have this like these chills going down your spine, like you're almost tearing up. You want to like march outside and start protesting like right away. But the thing is, it was so articulate. It wasn't like a Black Lives Matter speech or like the women's march that just happened, which was huge, just like yesterday or 2 days ago or something like that, where it was huge, and you hear some of the speeches, and they just were not that impressive. It was articulate, and it was powerful, and you just don't get that anymore.
Now, do you think that, like, today we listen to a Black Lives Matter speech, and to be honest, I don't agree with much what they have to say. I understand the ideology, the original ideology behind it.
Methods are terrible. They're blocking highways.
Even the name's sort of stupid, and I mean, and then when people say all lives matter, that's not
Those
the point.
People are stupid.
That's not the point at all.
They're both stupid.
But do you think that, like, when we listen to, let's say, a more educated Black Lives, I'm going to get flack for that, but like one of the best Black Lives Matters preachers, would you say that they're in comparison to Martin Luther King in the sense where everyone's going to think they're crazy? Like, do you think back then, we listen to Martin Luther King now and we think, this guy got it, and we don't disagree with anything he said. Do you think back then everyone was like, this guy's messed up? This guy has a completely different opinion than everyone.
The difference between back then and now is that back then they had objectives. I mean, you read, I'm sure a long time ago when I studied it, there were speeches by women's rights activists who wanted to get women's suffrage passed, and they formulated these essays, because I don't think there was that many recordings of that era. They had these essays that were so eloquently crafted, and they argued a point so powerfully that you couldn't help but get on board, right? Just yesterday, I was reading Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. I was reading it right here, and every like 3 seconds, I was like, "Holy shit!" Because he had a specific destination. He wanted equality for black. He wanted to end segregation. He wanted to stop lynching. He had set objectives, and he argued those points so eloquently. Today, people don't have specific objectives. They say police brutality is bad. They say there's sexism in the workforce, but they don't have specifics. If you went up to any one of those protesters and say, "Okay, you now can enact one law that you've been fighting for," they'd be like, I don't know exactly what law that I would want to make. But if you go to Martin Luther King, he'd say, end segregation right now. Overturn those court cases, completely effed up. And it only helped his case that he was a brilliant thinker. Like, anyone listening, if you have the opportunity, read a letter from a Birmingham jail. It is unbelievable. It's on civil disobedience. So, like, under what circumstances are you justified in not following laws, in disobeying the government's laws because you think the laws are unjust. And so he lays out this case, and it's so it made me almost tear up, and I wanted to like go outside and start protesting. Like, it was powerful. You just don't get that anymore. And I think part of it's because these movements don't have set objectives. It's the same thing that made Occupy Wall Street fall apart.
So for closing remarks, because we're sort of running, we've gone way over the time we allotted ourselves. Zach, you sort of had like the whole Canadian perspective sort of thing. We're definitely more Americanized in the sense that we're sort of brought up with all these problems that we've had. Like for instance, the whole gay marriage thing. Yeah. What was that? That was legalized back in 15, 14? Somewhere around there. And Canada's had it like 20 years since then.
Yeah, I can't even remember the day it happened. I was super young. something like
it
that.
was something
yeah.
ridiculous.
It was in the
Denmark
90s.
had it back in '69, I think it was. Yeah, it's so like, what, as an outside perspective, what's sort of your whole thought about this whole Trump, America, Black Lives Matter, just sort of the world perspective on where you think it's.
It all seems just like a reality TV show at this
Right.
point, to be honest. Because like being grown up in Canada, where our biggest issues is whether or not the middle tax bracket raises by 0.5%. We don't really have to think about things like abortion rights or gay rights, for instance, because especially people my age were born into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And so yeah,
So
I can't.
Like, it's
almost
super weird.
yeah.
That, like all these issues that we pretty much quote unquote solved, or at least opinions have converged on. People are fiercely fighting over, today, even though we did it like 20 years ago.
It's almost
Exactly.
unfathomable for me to have an opinion on any of these subjects about Trump or American politics, because it just seems like the solution and the answer should be trivial.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it should have something that should already have been solved like 20 plus years ago.
I can completely see that.
So it's hard for me to jump into conversations like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, just to close up the whole thing, I'm gonna say a word. I'm gonna say let's say around 10. I want you to say the first word that comes to mind, and do the same for you.
Okay.
Okay. Hit me. Trudeau.
Equality,
Trump.
narcissism,
Black Lives Matter.
needs to do better.
Lots of hyphens. Lots of hyphens for that one.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. But yeah,
Um.
there's probably a better solution to ending systemic racism
Yeah. Okay.
than burning boxes in a highway.
Russia.
Hacking. That just shows how bad the leftist media is, or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a
BuzzFeed.
fake news.
Obama's dog.
I can also say fake news.
Ambassador.
Obama.
Charismatic.
I
Ultimately
agree.
defeated, though. It's multiple words.
Michelle Obama.
Extremely likable. I know, again, multiple words, but okay, likable. Just
It's fine. You can do
bolded,
multiple
likable.
words. Hillary.
establishment.
Bill. Don't say the first word that comes to mind. Say the second
Everyone's
one.
thinking.
No, charismatic again.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I completely agree with that. Last one, Mr. Sanders. The politician.
The hero we need. The hero we don't deserve.
Oh,
I agree.
the top one of the top one.
The top 1 of the top 1 of the top 10%.
Okay, you guys, you can see we've had a lot of fun today. Thanks for sticking around. This has been your first episode of the Opinion Overhaul Podcast. Stay tuned for more videos. I think we had a lot of fun today, so
Yeah.
I think, and we have these conversations with each other all the time, so I think we just might be putting the mic in front of us more often.
Yeah, just like that.
Like, you guys might think we're nerds, but this is usually what goes on in this house.
Basically.
So if you like, just subscribe to this channel. Go check us out on Twitter. I'll have these guys' information down below if you want to go check out their Twitters or Facebooks. I don't know which one you guys want. Zach, say bye.
Bye, guys.
That was an inside joke. See you guys later. This has been Opinion Overhaul.